love. And you were fabulous last night, which is why I look like I haven't slept. Hi, I'm Dr. J. I have a strong New Zealand accent. That's where I'm from. I'm not going to mention the cricket. I'm a harbinger of change at ThoughtWorks. That's what happens when you let somebody write their own job title. My gender identity is transgressive non-binary genderqueer. That's what happens when you allow somebody to self-ID. This is what you've got coming up. So I'm going to talk about some of my journey and about how to become a general. So let me just hope the slides work. And there's a slide that will appear. I was also going to say, it's a massive privilege to be here while the slides come up. I can't believe how far India has come. It's less than a year since you made homosexuality legal. And you broke the shackles of the British colonization and that enforced kind of horribleness of oppression of homosexuality that they brought in. I can't think of any other country that has gone as far as running the first LGBT Job Fair and conference within a year of it becoming legal. So that is a massive, massive achievement by India. And you should all be very proud of yourselves. So let's start off. I'm going to talk very quickly about archetypes. Now, archetypes are the characters we use to tell stories. And these archetypes might seem to have genders. So one of the archetypes that I use is often associated as a man or as a male-gendered person. I've never seen them as that. I've always seen them as being part of me and absorbed them into who I am. So, I am the Knight of Swords. Now, it's tattooed on my arm, and I'll let the person taking this get a close-in of the arm. And I'll show you it bigger in a second. The Knight of Swords is a young man, or is a youth, a beardless youth, no beard, a youth, well, sort of, riding into the headwind, visor up, sword drawn. And swords are, in the tarot, are associated with intellect, but also with grief. They're that sharpness, that bite of life. And they're riding into the wind, and they're heading off. And this is how it can be when you're constantly fighting to be seen, when you're constantly fighting for your rights. You are constantly riding into battle. We can all identify with that person who's like, yes, I'm on to the next battle, and on to the next battle, and on to the next one. So I wanted to talk about how that can work out, and how that way of working can work. So I used to work for Nokia, and Nokia, at the time, were about to go down in the Human Rights Commission scale. So this is in the US, and it's a way that is used because there was no federal protection for LGBT people. The Human Rights Commission set up and got large corporates to give people LGBT rights and then rank them on an index and rated them as to how close they got. And they went to change it to add rights for transgendered people. And Nokia would have suddenly gone down to below 50%. So I started to work with people to get them to 100%. So I needed to work with the head of diversity. I needed to work with some of the Nokia employees in America, and I needed to work with the head legal counsel person. I can't remember the name off the top of my head. So how did this work out, this battling me? Well, I fought with everybody. So I fought with the head of diversity about how long things took. I fought with the general counsel, and she is so gracious that she still stays in contact with me, over the use of the word queer, because I identify as queer, and she saw it as an insulting word. She saw it as a pejorative term. She saw it as if I had sworn at her. So every time I said queer, she thought that I was swearing. She thought that I was putting myself down. So it had to become the LGBT plus, not Q plus, not QI plus or anything like that. It was just LGBT plus community at Nokia. And then I also fought with the local LGBT activists because they wanted stuff to happen in San Francisco and in New York, and they couldn't see that this should happen globally. They couldn't see that what Nokia put in shouldn't just happen in the US, it should happen in every country, and that was what I was fighting for. Now, one of the things that you don't see with the Knight of Swords is that they're alone. They're out on their own. They have no protection. Okay, so they're wearing a bit of battered armor, but they have no protection. They don't have a shield. Their visor is up. They're riding on into battle, but they're alone and they will take the blows. So then I joined ThoughtWorks, and one of the challenges for me was, how do I change my style? How do I stop fighting the world and start leading people? How do I make that change to myself? How do I go from becoming a knight into becoming a general? So I'm going to tell you a little quick tale about how this works out and then give you some advice based on what I've learned. So at ThoughtWorks, when I arrived, they were very keen to be inclusive, but they didn't quite get this whole non-binary thing. They didn't quite get this whole pronoun thing. So nobody knew how to ask me my pronouns. I got interviewed by two lovely people, and both of them were nervous as well as me, but they didn't know how to talk to me about pronouns. They didn't know how to refer to me. They were worried about that. How to ask my pronouns? Hi. Which pronouns do you prefer? Really is that simple. So one of the things that we started to do is, once I joined ThoughtWorks, was talk to people about what pronouns are, what non-binary meant, why inclusive gender-neutral toilets and gender-neutral facilities are really important, and started to look at how we do this. What that's meant is I've built a group of allies. So I've gone from, originally we had about 4 people who used to meet about once a month to try to figure out how we'd make things better. I just checked the mailing list this morning, and there's 120 people who have joined into our very active group. That's just in the UK. That's over a quarter of the employees in the UK are in our group, talking about how we make diversity and inclusion and much better within ThoughtWorks. And it's not just inclusion of these little boxes, it's inclusion going from women, non-binary people, sexuality, physical limitations, ageism, caring responsibilities. You can see how big diversity is suddenly becoming. Mental health. I'm going to fall off the stage in a second. Neuronormativity. So this is things like dyslexia, dyspraxia, dyscalculia, Asperger's, or no, what is it now? Being on the autism spectrum. All of those things we've started to include. So diversity is really huge, so everyone feels part of that conversation. So there isn't really an allyship because everyone's within that group. Run back over so I can see my slides. So, how did I gather this band of allies? How did I bring people towards me? So here's some advice. Take it, your mileage may vary. That's all that I'll say. Stop kicking them in the shins. It sounds obvious. I took 49 years, well, nearly 50. I turned 50 in a couple of weeks. Yes, I'm looking good, thank you very much. It took me this long to reach this point, to understand who I am, to understand these concepts. People are coming along really quickly. Don't kick them in the shins for not being there already. When they're starting to come along, congratulate them and help them on that journey. But also, don't give them cookies. So an ally, just turning up to your meeting doesn't make them an ally. Picking up an action point, saying, I'll join you in that meeting. I've got a connection and I will help you with that. You're nervous about talking to that senior person. I'll come along with you. I will help you in that conversation. That's an ally. Set standards for your allyships that's up about here and ask people to meet it. And then give them cookies when they reach this. Don't give them cookies for just turning up. Don't give them cookies for just being a decent human being. So, hey, you didn't beat me up, have a cookie. That's not allyship. Watch out for the lenses that you have. Now, we all have unconscious bias. That's why it's called unconscious bias. You do that and you discover the lenses that you're putting in front of your face and in front of your eyes and in front of your brain that change how you perceive what somebody does. Be aware of the lenses that you have. And then look again at what those actions are. So I come from and this is almost like the Presbyterian reunion, I also come from a Presbyterian conservative background. So I know that I have an unconscious bias against anyone who comes from a perspective of faith. I know that that's there, so I'm very aware of how I first off perceive what they say, and I'm very aware of how I have to process it. And it's an ongoing journey for me to uncover some of that wiring in my brain. And lastly, this is about that big diversity thing. They are us. So this is about taking the silos out of diversity, taking the silos out of our thinking. So this came up from Jacinda Ardern, the greatest Prime Minister our country has ever had, although Helen Clark is also pretty fabulous. After that dreadful tragedy in Christchurch, where 70-something Muslims were killed by a white supremacist who came over from Australia, who took guns into a mosque and killed people. In New Zealand, what I thought and everyone believed was one of the safest places in the world. And Jacinda Ardern, at that moment, turned around at that first press conference and said, "They are us." She took people who New Zealanders would have seen as other, as them, and brought them into us. And that changes how you think about somebody. If somebody is us, you will protect us. You will fight for us. You will go into battle for us. And that's really important. So we need to get people to see themselves as part of us, and then they will battle for us. Because, that's not the one I thought it was, but that's okay. I can run on to this one as well. Language is power. So when you say something and an ally picks it up and goes and repeats it, and they might not do it beautifully, they might mess the order up, they might not do it fabulously, but they will do it. Allies use our words. Don't make knowing the right words a privilege. Don't make knowing the right words a way of locking people out. Let them understand what those words are and let them use them. Give them those words. Give them the words to use. Because then you can lead your band of allies. You've pulled everyone together, you've given them the words, you've supported them, you've stopped kicking them, and you're giving them cookies when they actually reach standards. And that way, you can be bold, you can be brave, and you can be a general. And you can head out there and you can take on anything. And we can make this world so much better. We can make this world an amazing place. And my vision is that in 2025, India is far ahead of the rest of the world because you're such a diverse nation. You're such a diverse community. You're going to be far ahead of the rest of the world in this diversity and inclusion gig. And I'm going to be coming to you to learn how to do this stuff. And that's what I dream of. So this is me, and that's my job title, and that's my Twitter, and that's my email address. Feel free to get hold of me if you want to ask me anything. I'm hardly hiding myself. Come and find me and have a chat. And it's wonderful. And I've run only 3 minutes over, which is almost a record for me, given the amount of ad lib. So thank you very much. Thank you, my darling.